Welcome back to the Unsealed Archives. Today we are revealing the 5,000-pound industrial secret, why the Studebaker Carryall is America's toughest SUV. Long before the suits at Ford or Chevy controlled the suburbs, a company that built wagons for the Civil War created a machine so overbuilt it makes modern trucks look like toys. This is not just a 1950s relic. It is a mechanical bunker forged from bridge-grade steel and pure industrial history. Studebaker did not build this machine for the showroom. They built it for the survival of the American worker. It features a heavy-duty truck chassis and a one-wire heart that requires zero corporate permission to keep moving. But while the big three were fighting for sales, Studebaker was hiding a secret engineering loophole inside this iron frame. A design flaw so perfect it allowed the machine to outlive the very factory that built it. Why did the toughest SUV in American history disappear from our roads just when we needed it most? In 1852, the Studebaker brothers opened a blacksmith shop on the edge of South Bend, pounding out axles and wagon hubs for farmers who measured a man by what his tools could survive. There was no marketing department, no chrome, just iron and sweat. By the time the Civil War broke out, Studebaker was not just another wagon maker. They were the government's go-to for military-grade transport. 6,000 wagons, caissons, and ambulances rolled out of their yards for the Union Army. Each one was inspected by hand, each hub pressed into shape by hydraulic force that set a new bar for what counted as field-ready. The trade cards from that era did not brag about style. They listed inspection steps, mill checks for every axle, repeatable jigs for every wheel. A foreman's initials stamped in grease pencil meant the part had survived a test most modern cars would fail. Sand-aged Lake Superior iron, steel skeins pressed under tons of pressure, and a signed-off inspection sheet, that was the Studebaker promise. Every inch of that early production was about building something that could be trusted with lives and cargo, not just for a season, but for years of war and work. The same obsession with tolerances, the same jigs, and the same standard for honest iron would echo down the line, from wagon beams to the 99-inch wheelbase and the cross members of the Carryall. That is not nostalgia. It is the birth record of the 100-year machine. In the war years, Studebaker's South Bend plant didn't just crank out trucks. They built what the Army called the GP wagon, a 6x6 brute with the same heat-treated axle beams and hydraulic-pressed hubs their grandfathers had used on caissons. When the shooting stopped, the blueprints didn't get boxed up and forgotten. Instead, every jig, press, and inspection gauge was shelved, catalogued, and kept for what came next. The proof sits in the museum's 70-ton archive, where you can pull a 1948 memo from the engineering division that reads, "All frame spindles will be fabricated on the existing GP wagon press jig to guarantee 0.005-inch tolerance on the rear leaf spring mounting pads." That's not a marketing story, that's a metalworker's promise. John H. Miller, who ran the frame shop from 1944 to 1955, put it plain in his oral history. "We never threw away the old jigs. When the engineers asked for a sturdier frame for the Carryall, we simply set the same presses to a wider beam. The Carryall's 99-inch wheelbase, the gear-driven 232 V8, and those box-section crossmembers didn't come from a brainstorming session. They are the direct descendants of military contract specs, preserved in ledgers and steel. Every page and every part is still there, waiting for anyone who wants to see what honest iron looks like in the flesh." Start with the bones. The Carryall's frame isn't a suggestion, it's a declaration. 99 inches from hub to hub, every inch measured, not guessed. The main rails are C-channel steel, not the stamped folded tin you find under most sport utility vehicles. Each rail stands proud, over 3 inches tall, with flanges thick enough to take a ball-peen hammer without so much as a dent. The spec sheet calls for 1/8-inch gussets at every crossmember, but the real secret is in the numbers the factory men whispered and the accountants never understood. Section modulus is the measure of a frame's backbone, and Studebaker's was calculated for a payload that would buckle a family wagon in half. No welds here. Every joint is riveted, industrial, cold forged, and set with a pneumatic gun that could drive a pin through bridge steel. The cross members themselves are not afterthoughts. They're pressed from a half-inch channel, braced with double lap gussets, and each one is angled to spread the load, not just hold the shape. The front cross member alone could hang a small block engine from its center without flexing beyond specification. The middle and rear are the same story, 1/8 inch thick, 1/2 inch tall, and double riveted at every junction. That is not overkill. That is insurance against the kind of twisting loads that snap modern unibodies like breadsticks. The Carryall's wheelbase, 99 inches, was chosen for a reason. Not too long to get hung up in a ditch, not so short it bounces cargo into the headliner. It's the sweet spot, the same geometry the Army used for supply trucks that had to cross Europe without a pit stop. And every suspension mount, every spring perch sits on a pad machined to within 0.005 of an inch. That's not marketing, that's a machine that can be rebuilt by a farmer with a set of calipers and a rivet gun and still come out square. Flange thickness matters. Studebaker measured theirs with a micrometer, not a guess. The factory drawing shows 0.95 of an inch steel plus a 1/8 inch lip for the bearing caps. That's why you don't see Carryalls with cracked frames, even after 70 years of abuse. The cross members tie the whole thing together like the beams of an iron safe. Rivets, not welds, because a rivet can flex and survive, while a weld can crack and die. That's the difference between a vehicle built to last 100 years and one designed to make it through a lease. This is what honest iron looks like, a mechanical bunker, not a fashion statement. The Carryall's chassis isn't just strong, it's a fortress, and when the storms come, when the road turns to mud and the payload climbs past 2 tons, this is the frame that laughs at the weight. That's the industrial secret. That's why, when you open the museum's blueprints, you find the same numbers stamped in grease pencil, decade after decade. The 100-year machine doesn't apologize for its mass, it wears it like armor. The Commander V8 sits at the core of the 100-year machine, a block of iron built for permanence, not fashion. Under the hood there is no plastic, no clutter. Instead, there is a 232 cubic inch V8 with its camshaft spun by a gear train, not a chain or belt. This engine was designed for people who expect reliability to last decades. The cam gear setup is all steel, each gear cut from 0.062 inch hardened stock, heat-treated to 55 Rockwell, the same hardness used for wartime GP wagon axles. There are no tensioners, no nylon teeth, just a 5-gear train, each tooth crowned for quiet running over 100,000 miles. The timing set is a statement. Machines should serve their owners, not the other way around. Forged. Crankshaft and rods, not cast, mean that after 50 years, the journals still measure to spec. Nickel-boron alloy in the crankcase, rods forged to take punishment, and a cam ground to within 1/1000th of an inch. These choices are not nostalgia. They are why these engines can sit untouched for decades and then fire up with oil pressure on the first crank. The metallurgical choices are more than numbers. They are the reason this block shrugs off abuse that would destroy a modern engine. Factory dyno logs from 1949 recorded the Commander 5.8 at 130 horsepower and 210 pound-feet of torque. These were not marketing claims. They came from a 30-hour full-throttle endurance run with inspectors logging every hour. Military contract standards meant the engine had to survive, not just perform. Decades later, modern restorers put a 70-year-old Carryall on the dyno and see nearly identical numbers. Hemmings documented 128 horsepower at 3,400 revolutions per minute within 2% of the original spec. Honest iron does not fade. Every bolt and bearing follows a logic. Gear-driven timing means no chain to stretch, no tensioner to fail. Forged internals let the engine tow, haul, or idle in summer heat without complaint. Each design choice, from the cam gear to the nickel content in the crank, stands against disposability. The Carryall's V8 was built to outlast its accountants and its rivals, a mechanical bunker, not a gadget. The powertrain belongs to the frame. The 99-inch wheelbase and massive cross members form a backbone for the V8's torque day after day. The dyno sheet is more than numbers. It is a philosophy, Build it once, build it right, let the results speak. In an era of planned obsolescence, the dyno log of the 100-year machine is both warning and promise. Crack open the Carryall's frame, and you are staring at the kind of metallurgy that doesn't just survive decades, it dares you to try and wear it out. The steel in these rails isn't some anonymous blend. Spectrograph readings from a 1972 lab teardown show a carbon content of 0.18 to 0.22%, with manganese and silicon dialed in just right. That is not trivia. That is the reason every inch of this chassis holds a 34,000 pounds per square inch yield strength, shrugging off the kind of stress that would fold a modern SUV in half. Modern SUVs might boast about high-strength steel, but their stamped floor pans cannot match the Carryall's section modulus, no matter how many buzzwords they print in the brochure. Every fastener on this truck is a standard half-inch hex head, no mystery bolts, no proprietary nonsense. You want to pull a spring perch or swap a crossmember? All you need is a set of wrenches and the hands of someone who has swung a hammer before. Studebaker's engineers built the Carryall so a man in a field or a depot could fix it with what he had on hand. There is a kind of pride in that, a logic that says, if a part fails after 50 years, you give it another 50 with a new bolt and a little grease. No scan tools, no security codes, no waiting for a server in Detroit to let you use your own four-wheel drive. The ignition system is almost comical in its simplicity. One wire runs from the battery to the starter, and one cable on the floor turns it all live. That is it. No relays, no modules, no software handshake. You could drop the battery in a creek, dry it out, and be back on the road before a modern SUV even boots its diagnostic menu. This is what real serviceability feels like. Every system visible, every repair within reach, every failure a problem for steel and sweat, not a subscription. But numbers alone do not tell the whole story. There is a sensory heft to the Carryall that no spec sheet can capture. Open the rear door and you are moving 80 pounds of stamped steel. The thud when it closes is not just a sound, it is a promise. That door has kept out 50 winters, 100,000 miles of dust, and still latches with the authority of a bank vault. Every panel, every hinge, every bolt is overbuilt, not for the sake of excess, but because someone in South Bend believed a tool should outlast its owner. In the end, the Carryall is less a vehicle than a mechanical bunker, a rolling iron safe designed for a century of work. Modern drivers might marvel at touchscreens and remote start, but when the grid goes down and the road turns rough, give me a truck that starts with a single wire and closes with a door you can lean your life against. This is the 100-year machine. Honest iron, built for those who measure time in generations, not model years. In 1950, automotive industries called the Studebaker Carryall the workhorse of American industry. The numbers were hard: 5,000 pounds of payload, a 99-inch wheelbase, and a 232 V8 with gear-driven timing that ran whisper quiet. The magazine printed the chassis specs straight from the order sheet: C-channel rails thick as bridge girders, cross members built to hold an engine, and a cam gear meant to outlast its maker. The Army took notice. In 1951, the Quartermaster's acceptance list named Studebaker among the few trucks approved for permanent field use, citing a no-failure record over 15,000 miles of field testing and the same Wagon jig system that once built Union Army caissons. For a moment, it seemed honest iron had earned its place, but the market was shifting. The Big Three focused on volume and margins, not overbuilt specs. As municipal and Army orders rolled in, banks tightened credit. General Motors and Ford cut steel allocations, leaving South Bend's presses idle. Studebaker's Carryall was praised for its strength, but threatened by the numbers game. When the Packard and Studebaker merger fell apart, the last chance for honest iron died quietly in an office, not on the shop floor. By March 1966, South Bend's presses went cold, and the Carryall, along with every overbuilt frame and gear-driven V8, was swept aside by accountants and creditors. The shutdown was not just a business headline, it was the end of a century-long promise, the final chapter in a story written in steel. No more 99-inch wheelbases cut to army specs. No more cam gears that could outlast a mortgage. The doors closed with the same thud as an 80-pound tailgate, echoing down empty hallways lined with blueprints and inspection tags. But the Carryall did not disappear into scrap. In the silence that followed, a handful of stubborn mechanics and archivists, folks who measured time by the life of a grease fitting, gathered what they could. They formed the Studebaker Drivers Club, not as a nostalgia act, but as a rescue mission. Their library became the safe house for every torque spec, every metallurgical report, every handwritten memo about rivet patterns and frame cross members. The 100-year machine survived, not because a corporation demanded it, but because a few true believers refused to let honest iron fade. Today, the knowledge lives in dog-eared service bulletins and shared stories, proof that real durability outlasts any corporate collapse. September 2026. A man in Ohio sits behind the wheel of his 2-year-old SUV, a Ford Explorer hybrid, and finds the touchscreen blinking red with the message, "Subscription expired, features disabled." The truck will not shift out of park, the 4-wheel drive locks in limp mode, and the hill hold brakes are dead weight. The culprit is not a broken part or a busted relay. It is a lapsed $12 a month payment to Ford's premium tech cloud. The vehicle's own telematics module, waiting for permission from a server 3 states away, has turned a 5,000-pound machine into a driveway sculpture. Reuters covers the story. Motor Authority tears down the technicals, explaining how a missing authentication token in the firmware disables core systems, and how 90,000 owners lose access overnight. There is no wrench for this, no relay to jump, no wire to twist. The only fix is a credit card and a prayer to the cloud. This is not a rare glitch. The software lockout is systemic, enforced by remote servers, and sanctioned by automakers who now own the very function of your machine. In a blackout, in a flood, or when the bill goes unpaid, control vanishes with a click. The 100-year machine never asks for a password or a patch. What passes for progress now is a vehicle that can be bricked by a billing cycle. Preserving a 100-year machine is not about locking it in a glass case. It is about keeping it alive in the wild, on job sites, in barns, rolling down county roads with a bed full of gravel. The Carryall was built to be serviced, not retired. Every hex bolt, every riveted crossmember, every gear-driven cam in that 232 VAI-8 was meant for a mechanic with a wrench, not a software patch. The proof is in the field. Trucks rebuilt on the same jigs, engines overhauled with parts pulled from catalogs digitized by the Studebaker Drivers Club, and repairs done in independent garages where the only subscription is to a torque spec. The roadmap is simple. Join the club, tap into the archive, swap stories and service bulletins. Keep the catalog alive and the blueprints circulating. When a crossmember cracks, there are still shops with the rivet guns and the know-how to press steel to spec. The Carryall's resilience is not just a memory, it is a living record written in grease and iron. Stewardship. Here means using the machine, sharing the knowledge, and refusing to let honest iron get buried beneath software locks and disposable tech. That is how you honor the industrial secret, by making sure the 100-year machine keeps earning its scars. Out in my own garage, the 99-inch wheelbase still sits square, crossmembers thick as vault bars, the 232 V8's gear-driven heart ticking on. This is the iron safe. No app, no cloud, just a mechanical bunker built for a century, not a model year. We trade honest iron for updates and wonder why trust feels disposable. So what will outlast us, software or steel? Drop your thoughts in the comments.